Well, on that, I guess I'm visible today and glad to be here. I've been doing business as mission, focused on poverty and ending poverty for over 25 years. So that was pre-BAM, and I didn't know the term. However, some of you heard that people have been motzed over the years when they heard about BAM for MOTS. However, I was dentist. I heard about BAM first in 2006 in Nairobi, Kenya, from dentist Tongoi, who is now a dear friend and a colleague, who is the voice of BAM in Africa. And in 2006, he had come fresh off the Lausanne conference about BAM, and he was preaching it, man. And he got to my heart, and he touched what was a passion for me, business as a mission, as a calling. And he affirmed me, and he's affirming the entrepreneurs in Africa. He's affirming around the globe. And I'm very glad to welcome him here now as the CMS Director, International Director for CMS-Africa. He's also the author of Mixing God with Money, Strategies for Living in an Uncertain Economy. He's completing his doctorate in theology, did I get that right, at UNISA, the University of South Africa, and his thesis is Business as Mission, Case Studies on Sustainable Mission in East Africa. So Dennis, karibu sana.
Good morning. It is indeed a joy for me to be here and get us off this morning after the devotion. I will be presenting BAM from an African perspective. I think we're up there. And I want to just disclose that for us in Africa, our understanding of mission is not something we live here to go and do over there. We see mission in a fuller sense as God's act of redemption. And personally for me, when I got involved in business as mission in Lausanne, I came away recognizing that business is a domain in which sin has impacted, and that God is in the business not just of using business to redeem others, but that business itself needs to be redeemed. And that has been my perspective. And to do that, we have established a business in Africa, in Nairobi, which has gone through all the challenges that any business in the world goes through: capital, corruption, you name it. But we're authentic in business because we believe that God wants to use business people, but also to redeem the business domain. The first thing I'd like us to come together, let me see that, sorry, I need to get, sorry, okay. So there's a slide missing from there. I don't know what's happening to that slide. But I'd like us to come to recognize that the economic crisis is not global. Other parts of the world have experienced the last few years in a very different way. There's some milestones as you look back over the last 15 or 20 years. We see the corruption of socialism, the collapse of socialism, and it seemed that capitalism had triumphed. More recently, we've seen the dysfunctions of free market capitalism. And this could be marked with the subprime mortgage crisis in September 2008, climaxing in the Occupy Wall Street, London, etc., etc. So we're living in a world in which business has not got a very good name. Socialism, capitalism, but out of Africa, I think I've seen that, okay, thank you, sorry, I've got to keep looking back because I can't see the front. Out of Africa, we're seeing something new happening. We're seeing the impact of state capitalism as China invests in Africa, And we're seeing Africa emerging. We heard about the Arab Spring yesterday, out of Africa, Tunisia, and the wave that has caused in North Africa. And again, the Arab Spring beginning from a graduate who could not find a job. And one of my good friends said, what Bouzizi accomplished, Osama bin Laden could not with all his bombings and his wealth. One poor man, desperate for life. We're now seeing a new term, the emerging economies. Of course, we talk about the BRIC countries. We're now seeing the S, South Africa. And the rest of Africa is following. And in a sense, the global economy has always been in crisis. With over 700 million people dying from obesity and close to 1 billion people dying of hunger, the big challenge has been the inequitable distribution of resources. That has been a global problem. That is a crisis. WHO states that by 2015, there'll be as many people dying of obesity as people in Africa, in the whole of Africa. So the big challenge before us is how do we live in an equitable world? And Africa, for a long time, has borne the brunt of this. FAO says there's actually enough food for everybody in the world. In fact, enough food to feed twice the number of people who are living today. And a study has also shown that 40% of the current food grown in the Western world, and this is in Britain, is thrown away. 40% is not eaten. So we're living in a world where the economic system is not functioning properly. And for me, that's where I believe that BAM needs to actually begin to look at the macro context. And we in Africa have borne the brunt of that inequality, of that iniquity. The next challenge is who defines wealth. For a long time, wealth has been defined by GDP, which has actually promoted greed because it's defined by production, increased production, whether or not we need the food, the goods. Other indices are coming up, like the GINI index, the Global Inequality Index. On that index, the country with the highest GDP in Africa is South Africa, is the most unequal. And the question you want to ask yourself, what economic model is South Africa following? Is it following a model that's going to bring about equity, or is it just going to fracture the world and imitate the collapse of free market social capitalism we're seeing, where the 1% owns more than the 99%? So we need to be asking ourselves, how can BAM begin to change the story? And Africa is changing the story. 10 years ago, the economists, that's kind of the Bible for Bammers, the economists talked about the hopeless continent. 10 years later, Africa is rising. And those of you who are going to read The Economist know that even the last few issues, Africa's strengths are beginning to be documented. I met an investor who came to Nairobi and told me, we invested in so-called secure economies. Look what happened to us. We're coming back to the risky economies where there's growth in Africa. We want to invest here. But Africa is coming from a long, long way. Size matters. Africa's share of the global GDP, if you have to use that term, is only 2%. We're very, very small. Africa's size is huge. We basically can accommodate the USA, Let me just stand back here. Yeah? So literally, and if you're from the UK, you can fill up the UK in some of the spaces that are missing there. And many people don't realize this. They think Africa is a country. Africa is a continent. And it's huge potential. But what struck me is that Africa's economies are so small. In my research, I've almost got desperate and asked myself, are we relevant at all to the global economy? The Indian stock market, the largest in the developing world, is less than 1/30th the size of the US stock market. The Nigerian stock market, the second largest in sub-Saharan Africa, is less than 1/5000th of the US stock market. Ghana's stock market, don't even talk about Kenya. We're almost irrelevant. In fact, the entire use of petroleum products of sub-Saharan Africa, minus South Africa, is less than the evaporation loss of North America. I so ask myself, what use is Africa then to the global economy? And this is part of the crisis when it comes to business as mission in Africa, is it appears as if Africa's economies are irrelevant. Yet Africa is looking up. This latest report by McKinsey, The Rise of the African Consumer, in October last year, was an amazing eye-opener. The African market is small, but it is the fastest growing, or probably the only growing market globally. With almost, projected to be almost 400 billion by 2020. It's probably the only continent where the youth exceed the older people. It is the only continent where the middle class is positive about the future. Urbanization is taking place, and modern retail systems are beginning to actually function. So despite Africa's size, Africa is growing. And Africa is ready for the marketplace revolution. You look at the mobile phone penetration, there's over 650 million users, more than the US or the European Union. Despite our numbers, most of us have 3 or 4 mobile phones, by the way, because you've got to figure out where the network is strongest. The internet penetration in most major cities, 52%, and the GDP of countries such as Ethiopia and Zimbabwe are the highest in the world. And we're also being innovative. The banking, the mobile money transfer was innovated in Africa. In fact, the gentleman from Kenya, Henry Maniki, who's here with me, was part of the pilot project for that. It's now a global phenomenon. So in Africa, there is hope. But the challenge for us in BAM in Africa is that the word investment, when I talk to my friends in the West, is a misnomer. Because we're used to the dominance of the microfinance, which are called mission as business. Because you raise funds in the West, come and do something in Africa, it doesn't have to be sustainable necessarily, because you're always being subsidized from the West. And this has been a good beginning, where you target the jobless, you target startups, and donor funding is very significant. When I ask for investment from the West or the East, the biggest gap right now is in the SME sector, where we need to target job makers, taxpayers. Why is this important? It's because if BAM is going to have an influence in Africa, we must begin paying taxes to our countries. And when we start paying taxes to our countries, we now start having a political voice and we can be heard. In the SMEs, in their multiplicity, have no political voice. So my passion is to see the growth of the SME sector and to create a voice that can begin to influence the domain of business within our countries. And yet the SME sector, the scale-ups, is one of the biggest challenges we're facing right now. How do we attract investment funding? Because investment is expensive. Capital is expensive. You're talking about 19%, 25% cost of capital. You're talking about corruption. You're talking about lack of competition, very high profit margins by some companies. The company that I've been able to establish, Herbal Garden Limited, we're dealing with aloe vera products. We received funding from a quote investor. 1 year later, the money is not in our account, and we're supposed to be competing because we could not corrupt the person who writes the check. So, is there Christian venture capital that can actually bypass corrupt money that's available from the financial markets? When I talk to a businessman in America to invest, we only need $100,000 US. They think I'm talking about a donation, because $100,000 is not an investment. It's loose change. There's a rounding off error in his business. So how do we begin to match the smallness of those SMEs and the need to grow with adequate systems of integrity that can help those SMEs grow? And there's a big gap. But I think the biggest gap we also face is one of strategy. Which development model is right for Africa? We in Africa receive all kinds of visitors with all kinds of ideologies. You may look at the Singapore model, which is highly controlled, and we've seen the success of Singapore. Do you want to have highly controlled economies? We may want to look at the Norwegian model that is highly taxed, or look at the Chinese model that's highly planned. In Africa, we're highly divided. So one of the challenges we have in BAM is when you come to Africa, which model are you going to actually work with? What model are you going to find on the ground? We have two choices, I believe, if we are to redeem the business domain. Whichever model it is that we look at, we have two choices: whether exploit or empower. And that's been my conclusion as I've looked at economic models. Are we coming to exploit the people, or are we coming to empower the people? Whichever model one uses, if you're coming to empower the people, that to me is what BAM is all about, is changing the paradigm from business being exploitative, where it exploits the environment, exploits the labor, exploits the people, to business being empowering. Because sin has always been around. This is the book of Amos, and it says, "Hear this, you who trample the needy and do away with the poor of the land, saying, when will the new moon be over, that we may sell grain, and the Sabbath be ended, that we may market wheat, skimping the measure, boosting the price, and cheating with dishonest scales, buying the poor with silver and the needy for a pair of sandals, selling even the sweepings with the wheat." That's from the Daily Telegraph of last week. That is Amos 8:4-6. So sin has impacted trade. And whatever model you're going to bring to do business as mission in Africa, we must be a redemptive model. It must be a model that seeks to change the paradigm to redeem the business culture in Africa. See, kingdom business models empower. Ephesians 4:28 says, "He who has been stealing must steal no longer, but must work doing something useful with his own hands, that he may have something to share with those in need." And so we need to see that transforming models empower, while extractive models exploit. And I believe there is need for a great reversal. From economies focused on accumulation only, driven by greed, to those which focus on holistic view of the economy. And this is where BAM comes in. That our quadruple bottom line that we advocate is resonating well with business people in Africa. And Africa, because of its size, is still virgin territory a clean slate, the only way is up. And we have an opportunity of redefining an alternative business model. One of the books that has impacted me a lot has been King Tang's book, The Gospel of Jubilee, where he talks about the need to move beyond just the tithe, which is what we tend to focus on income, to the Jubilee, which is a redistribution of capital, an issue of capital, justice on capital. Not just individuals or the material needs of people, but seeing nations and relationships restored. So I keep looking back, just make sure my slides are gone. So if we focus on the traditional model of just GDP making more money, we find that greed is encouraged. And I appreciate this morning's devotion from 1 Timothy. The dangers of any business is that you'll make money, lots of money. And that will result in greed. And in Luke chapter 12, we see the story of this rich man who, for him, his entire business was focused on himself. And he's told, you fool, tonight your soul will be required of you. But that's not only true for the rich. It also promotes greed amongst the poor. Greed is not a problem of the rich or the poor. It's a human condition. Someone in the crowd told Jesus, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me. Jesus replied, who appointed me an arbiter or judge between you? This guy was wanting what he did not have. And the danger, if you come to Africa and our hearts are not correct, is to promote greed. And we begin to want what we don't have. And we come to Jesus and it becomes a spiritual activity. It just becomes one more way of gaining the African dream. And Jesus is warning us, take heed and beware of all greed, for man's life does not consist in the abundance of greed, in the abundance of possessions. So one of the things that BAM can do globally is to build relationships, supportive relationships of accountability. And this story in Luke is a very interesting story. This manager is told, time's up. The master is coming to ask you to give account of what you've done. And he realizes he's going to go home soon. So he goes and asks his friends, you owe the master so much, please cancel it and write so much. You know the story. But the interesting thing is that the master commended the dishonest manager because he acted shrewdly. For the people of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own kind than are the people of the light. I tell you, use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourselves, so that when it is gone, you'll be welcomed into eternal dwellings. And I want to place it to you is that we as Christians need to be as shrewd as the people of the world. It's not about money. This man was recommended by Jesus for acting dishonestly. Now, see, that's what businessmen do. No. He was commended for building relationships with his money, not focusing on the money. So BAM is an opportunity for kingdom relationships. We may lose the money together, but our love for each other and for God will grow. So come and invest together on our knees, and we lose money. But we gain the kingdom, we gain friendship. And I think we need to look at BAM as a redemptive action, not just we need to make profit. So can BAM make a difference in Africa? Again, I just gave you some people who are thinking about the fact that businesses need to be redeemed. I'm not going to go through this, but these are some people that are talking about the redemption of businesses. And Africa, I'm inviting you to come because we're at the beginning of an economic miracle. Come and join us. We can reshape a new global economic paradigm. And that's my passion. It's saying, can Africa contribute to a new economic paradigm? BAM in Africa is an opportunity to create a new development paradigm. We can leapfrog socialism. We can leapfrog free market capitalism. We can leapfrog casino capitalism. BAM has an opportunity to challenge and change the measure of true wealth. Not just GDP, there must be something more. There's a Human Development Index There's several other indices who must begin to advocate for defining what is a truly wealthy country. And I believe BAM in Africa can become a critical mass that shifts the paradigm to what success is. So, Africa, our desire for business as mission is not just to see business as a redemptive instrument, but redeem the business domain and be part of telling the story of business people who are living a redemptive lifestyle, redeeming their domain. And I invite you, as we consider this conference, think of both, not just going to do mission from here to there, but how can we Christian business people change the entire business environment? Thank you very much.